The next question is a fill in the blank. Taylor Swift is dash.
Taylor Swift is very dangerous for her ex-boyfriends.
That's unavoidable. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nothing But the Tea. My name is Jessica, and I'll be your host this season. For our very first episode, we have Miss Neetu Shukla, who will be our guest. She is a senior business manager at a real estate firm, and she is brilliantly skilled in marketing and management. Brilliant, sharp, jovial, and many more adjectives can be used to describe her, but we'll find out more once we start the interview. So, with a cup of chai, a tinge of gossip, and inspiring words, let's begin. So, Neetu, how are you feeling today?
Very good. Thank you so much. And with that glorious introduction, I don't think I want to speak anymore because I wouldn't want to take away from that introduction.
Oh, we're very excited to have you here and to especially learn from you and what you have to say.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I hope I can contribute effectively for your show.
I'm 100% sure you will be able to. So, like I said before, you're a senior manager at a real estate firm, and with the pandemic happening, everything that you are doing is now shifted online. How has that been for you?
So, what is really exciting in any sphere of work is when there's innovation in what you do. So every time there's something new that happens, which takes you out of your comfort zone, that makes your work exciting. I think when you have a comfort zone created where you work, it becomes very mundane.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I look at it, I find it really amazing when there's a curveball thrown at you and how you handle it and how you move forward with it. So it's the challenges that make job fun.
That's a very nice way of looking at it. I think a lot of us need that optimism right now, even though it's been extended for so long. So, with work from home, have you always been someone that liked working from home? As a kid, did you like being indoors or outdoors? What was that like?
Um, Actually, as a child, all I ever wanted to do was be a flight attendant. I don't even know how that came about because when I was a child back in the day, there wasn't so much exposure to aviation the way it is now. And we only had one carrier, Air India, till I graduated. The other private players came into play much later. So I don't even know where that came from. And then I was a flight attendant for 19 years of my life. For me, the thought of sitting in an office and working was absolutely petrifying. I could never think or see myself sitting in an office because the whole idea of seeing the same people every day, doing the same work every day was too mundane for me.
Mm-hmm.
So working from home makes it even more claustrophobic.
Yeah.
So working from home is not something that I'd ever imagined myself do. This is something brand new.
But like you said, curveballs are always necessary. So it's a great way of looking
Yes.
at it. Talking about your
Yes.
childhood, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
So I grew up in town in an area called Bombay Central. I went to a convent school and I stayed in this huge colony which had about 600 flats in it, and it was designed by the same person who had designed the city of Chandigarh. It's a French
Oh,
designer.
that's
Yeah,
so
so it
cool.
was beautifully done up, and we had like a clubhouse and a sports house. We had a mini supermarket when there was no concept of supermarket in those days, and it was a very, very nice place. So because there were so many people, we had a very active childhood, unlike how kids have it nowadays. So it was a lot of action, a lot of sports, a lot of games, a lot of interaction. So that sort of makes you a little more outgoing as a person. So it helped me in my development a lot. So that was my
That's
childhood.
really nice. I mean, having 600 flats, that big of a community when you're growing up, that must have been really nice compared to how people, like, with the times we are in right now, that sounds so loving and such a comforting place to be in, I'm sure.
It was.
Yes, you had mentioned flight attendants since you were pretty young and having no exposure to it, not really seeing much of it. What was the attraction? Where did it all come from? The dream, where did that come from?
So I really don't know where the dream came from. And, ever since I tried to figure it out, I don't know how and why it happened. But I remember in the third standard, my teachers are having that, the composition that they used to write, and they used to say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I had written air hostess.
Mm-hmm.
So in my school, everybody knew, all my teachers knew that I wanted to be a flight attendant. And it was funny, but after I graduated, I went back to school, and we had this whole ex-students meet kind of thing. And all my teachers came and asked me, "Are you a flight attendant yet?" But I hadn't graduated.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know where that fascination came from, but
I
I'm
guess
happy it
I
happened.
guess destiny just has a way of finding you. So after you graduated, you continued and you went to study to be a flight attendant, right?
I didn't study. So after I graduated, I applied for my first airline. It was a company called East West.
Mm-hmm.
It was a domestic carrier. It was like a seven-star carrier. Um, I applied, and surprisingly, I got through in the first shot. So that was really nice. But because I knew I wanted to be a flight attendant, I knew I wanted to work towards it. And in
Mm-hmm.
those days, like I said, there weren't many airlines.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult to get into an airline. It wasn't like it is now, where it's
Yeah.
relatively very, very easy to get into one. There weren't any training schools, there wasn't any of those things. So while I was graduating and I was still studying, I had gone and joined a restaurant which was a part of Sun and Sand at that time. It was called Jewel of India.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked in the service industry because I knew a service industry experience would probably help. So I
Yeah.
was that focused since the
Mm-hmm.
beginning about wanting to be one. And I worked there for about 13 months before my graduation. And then I applied and I got through in the first round of interviews. So I was really lucky. So
I'm
that's
sure
how it
I'm
happened.
sure you can blame it on luck, but I mean, speaking to you only for about 5 minutes now, and I'm sure you have a way with words completely. It wasn't luck. It was genuinely your focus which is so inspiring to see someone aiming for their dream that much at such a young age. It's really nice to
Hmm.
see that. So, in your career, when you started East West, what was the turning point in your career?
Uh, there wasn't really any turning point as such. It was just realization of dreams. So it was like one merry-go-round after another. It was like a party every day on flights. I felt really nice because I was where I wanted to be. Um, when you go for these kind of interviews, everybody says, "I love meeting people, I love talking to people." But for me, that was a genuine thing. I really liked meeting people. I enjoyed talking to people. And I feel the more you talk to people, the more it sort of gives you an insight into other people's minds and thought, and it expands your own vision,
Mhm.
because then you're not just limited to your thought process. There are a lot that you get exposed to, and then you learn so much from people, and that sort of completes your growth as a person. So on flights, I made it a point to talk to people, and in Indian aviation back in the days, it was a very youthful phase because the private carriers had just about started coming in. So the oldest crew would be about 24, 25. We were like 19 when we started. So with that kind of a young crowd, it used to be a party time on board the aircraft. It was a lot of fun, and I've had like the best times on flights. So it was a good phase.
Yes, so Neetu, so we know that after East West, where did you move on? Which other airline did you work at after that?
So I worked with four carriers altogether in my career. I started off with East West. I moved on to Jet Airways. Then I flew Singapore Airlines and then Kingfisher. That's where my dreams crash landed.
So when you were working at Kingfisher, with the dispute happening all around it, how did you handle it mentally?
So I believe very strongly that every organization depends and thrives on the culture that it inculcates. Um, Fortunately, the culture of Kingfisher was such that all the employees were very united. We were all very good with each other. It wasn't bitter, or it wasn't competitive to a bad extent. It was competitive to a very good degree where we motivated each other, and it felt like a family. So even while the times were really tough and when things were very bad, because of the culture that it had among the employees, we all supported each other. We all stood by each other. That didn't take away from the professionalism, because the professionalism was there till the end. But what it did was, you think more for your job and for the people rather than yourself. And that taught me something. Like it really taught me something that if you're doing something, it's very important to be honest to what you're doing.
Yes.
And that's exactly how they were over there. So, to give you a brief example, like towards the end, of course, when things went very bad, and because nobody was paid, not just the employees, but even the vendors, the the catering companies had started reducing the food that they used to get on board. And when they started doing that, we used to fall short of meals for passengers. And these were passengers who paid their full fare and didn't have food. The crew would actually give up their meals for passengers. And then when we would land at a particular airport, we just, go out, pick up something and come and eat on flight. So if somebody to that extent thinks about their work rather than themselves, it taught me something. And that was amazing. So the whole experience of even when things are bad, how you can make the most of it, I've learned a lot from that experience.
It's so nice to hear that together, even through all of that, you guys were so supportive, and y'all formed a community at the end of it, which is really nice. I mean, from everything that happened, it was
Yeah.
necessary what
Yeah,
happened.
I think when things go bad is when you actually get to know what a person is truly made of. When everything is going well, you know that people are going to react in a certain manner. But it's when times are tough that you get to know people. You really get to know people. So it opened up our eyes to a lot of things around. You see the people that you're dealing with, the people who own your company, the governments of the day. It shows you everybody's reality.
Hmm.
So that was really nice because it's a lesson in life. You learn about how to read people and how to see beyond the words, like
Yeah.
just beyond lip service. And it sort of creates a bond among the people who've been in it together. So I think all of us Kingfisher employees will always be there for each other, no matter where we go or how many years down the line. If we see one another, we know there's an affinity that we have to each other.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. After all of it,
that was
you
nice.
formed a family, basically.
Correct.
So you quite literally took a leap from the sky and came down to management. And management in real estate. Are there any similarities in what you used to do before and now in real estate? Have you seen anything that's been similar?
So, when I stopped flying, because like I said, I wanted to do since childhood and I couldn't see myself do anything else, it took me a long time to actually think of what I wanted to do with my life and what career options I wanted to take. Like I said, the thought of sitting in an office was very, very scary for me. I couldn't see myself get up every single day at the same time,
Yeah.
travel the same distance, go to the same office, see the same people. I think the most scary part of it was waking up at a particular time every day. Because as a flight attendant, your timings are very erratic. I may have like a 4 o'clock reporting in the morning one day, and the next day I may have like a 12:30 reporting. So it becomes very erratic, and I love that part of my job. So when I had to wake up at one particular time, like 6:30 every morning, I have to get up to go to work. That was a shock for my system completely. Like I started having a body clock where even on a Sunday, my eyes would open up at 6:30, 7 in the morning. So it took a lot of adjustment. In terms of the job that I did, the company that I joined was just starting out at that point of time. And the profile that they offered me didn't exist in real estate because I was the head of client relations for my company. Being the head of client relations, I think my experience helped to an extent because you're very comfortable talking to people and reading people. Um, I'll give you an example. When a flight attendant stands and greets passengers on an aircraft, we are constantly judging people when they come in. So you look at people and oh, this one may have these requirements. This one's going to give me problems. This one is somebody I can count on. If there's an emergency, I know this is an able-bodied person who'll be able to help people in case of an emergency. So a lot of thoughts go by. So you very quickly learn to read people. So being able to read people helped a lot because as head of client relations, to know what your clients want, what will help them, what will help your company to sell the property, and what things can you do to enhance the experience. All that came from that bit of my life. So it did have similarities to me a lot.
So you had mentioned that when people get on a flight, your first job is to judge the people, see who you can count on. Do you all have training for this? Because it seems very interesting to, as soon as you see someone, you have to like immediately categorize what this person is. So how do you go about doing that?
So, it's not something that you're trained to do, but because of, by the virtue of meeting so many people and interacting and seeing how people react, uh, it's just second nature. It may not be a very good thing because when I sit, I can just see somebody and psychoanalyze them in 2 minutes, which may not be a very nice thing to do, but it happens, and it's not that you're judging them harshly or for
Hmm.
the wrong reasons, but you just learn to interpret people much better.
Yeah.
It's not really something that you're trained for, but it's not something that you can escape either.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Does that still kick in sometimes now and then when you're looking at someone?
So it helps. It really helps. Like, for example, towards the end, before every flight, we have a briefing where we brief all the crew and you
Hmm.
tell them about how you expect the flight to go. And I was an in-flight director back in Kingfisher towards the end. So I used to have this whole set of 12, 15 people. And while you talk to them, I already knew who's going to perform, who's not going to, who's going to cut short their services, who's going to give me problems, who's going to go out of their way to help people. So you sort of get to know that. So when you deal with people, whether it's your management or whether it's your customers, you again can judge what to expect out of them, whether they're going to give you
Hmm.
problems or not, whether they're going to be easy, whether they're going to be challenging. So yeah, so that's what happens.
So with being a flight director and now being a business manager and a position in management, when it comes to management, what is the one thing it all boils down to? What is the most important element of management?
Um, at the end of the day, whatever your business, whatever you deal in, or whatever you do, what everybody is working for is for their customers or their client base. So at the end of the day, you have to remember that your profit margins will be stabilized provided your product and quality is good.
Yeah.
Um, as long, and this works through across all genres of businesses. It can't be just one. Everything at the end of the day boils down to the fact that if you are doing your work fine, if you are sincere and you're not cutting short corners and you're not trying to be, like you're not trying to cheat people and you actually value your customers, then your profit margins and your growth and your development all falls in line and everything will be in place. Um, I think it's very important to understand what is it that you're dealing in, what is it that people want, and whether you can step up and deliver that.
Yeah.
Out of box thinking helps a lot as well, because if you're just in this doing the same mundane things, then you'll get the same results. It's when you do things differently that things improve. So it, yeah, I think that's what all management people, successful management people at least, would probably be adhering to.
Yeah, I can understand that. Working with Kingfisher and even throughout real estate, what were some of the major obstacles that you faced?
Um, Working for Kingfisher, I think the most challenging thing was obviously about the morale of people towards the end. Like I said, it is difficult because luckily some of us were well taken care of at home and we had a strong support system. But there were people who didn't have that. So when they would come on flights to motivate them, and I'm not just talking flight attendants, I'm talking pilots, I'm talking ground staff, everybody. Simple things like a loader who earns like 6,000 rupees a month, things, people like that. That was a little tough. The passengers were by and large very nice because everybody knew what was going on. But there were instances where we had real challenges because not everybody would want to be understanding. And that's fair enough because they paid a huge amount of money and they expected certain things to happen in a certain way. So we've had very challenging hair-raising times. Uh, but I think that's the fun of the job. Real estate has been fun. Uh, Real estate becomes challenging when you have timelines that you need to keep for a particular deliverable. And if that doesn't happen, then how do you take it from there? How do you still have people not get very upset? So that part of it resembles the previous part of my job. So yeah.
So I was watching Bad Boy Billionaire, and in the episode when they were launching Kingfisher, one of the main ads, I think one of the first ads that they put out, said something that really struck me. It was, "We don't hire flight attendants, we hire models." Um, Now, in the body positivity point of view and specter, looking back at it, how do you feel about that one particular sentence?
Um, so honestly speaking, I never took that negatively because I think if I launch a business, I decide who works for me or what kind of product I'm trying to put out in the market. I cannot have somebody else judge how I should run my business. The body positivity that they spoke about for flight attendants was never about looks. It was all about your personality. Um, if you say that the person's height and weight should be in proportion, I think it's healthy. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If the reason actually flight attendants are supposed to be of a particular constitution and they're supposed to maintain it is because in an emergency, so let me take that back. When you're a flight attendant, you're actually on board only to help in case of an emergency. If you get any service out of a flight attendant, that's a perk. But the flight attendant is basically there in case a plane crashes to evacuate people or if somebody falls as a medical emergency to handle that. Now, if you have somebody who's obese, you may take the person, but in case of an emergency, when you have a window hatch which is really tiny and you have to make people, you have to evacuate people out of that, it becomes a little tough to be agile and fast. So, you to give you a brief idea of how quick you have to be in case of an evacuation, if the aircraft is completely full, whatever the aircraft type, whatever the make, whether it's the tiniest one to the largest aircraft, you assume that in an emergency, half your exits are not usable because there'd be a fire or it would crash in a particular place where half the sides were not usable. So, with just using half the exits, you're supposed to evacuate the entire plane full of people in 90 seconds. That's the time you have. So if you are not fit, if you are not in the best body, I wouldn't say shape, but at least agility, that'll affect your safety part of your job. So I didn't take it negatively. And anyway, everybody's so health conscious now that if it forced you to stay healthy, it wasn't an harm. Like I know we had these monthly, bi-monthly weight checks. And every time you increase your weight limit, they start cutting our bonuses and our money, at the end of the month. And that forced a lot of people to be in shape. If you went 2 kgs above your weight limit, then you were grounded. When I worked for Singapore Airlines, for example, we didn't have any weight check at all. I was there for about 6 years, over 6 years. So the 6 years, there was not a single weight check. But their criteria was that the uniform that they give you have to fit into that uniform. The day you don't fit into that uniform, you can't come to work and no alterations were allowed. There were no margins in the uniform for you to increase. So that's how they kept the check in place. But I know a lot of my friends who complain that they've started putting on weight once they stop flying because there are no weight checks anymore. So yeah, I didn't take it negatively. For me, it was all right.
That's yeah, that's nice. So moving on, I had recently watched an interview you did on Republic TV where you talked about
Mhm.
women in the workplace and oppression, or maybe how it works for women in the workplace. Do you think us as a generation, the younger people, do you think we're making a significant effort to equalize how women are treated, to bring the oppression like much less? Do you think we are making any effort to make it better?
I think women are constantly making the effort. But let me be very politically incorrect. Gender equality in workplaces in India is nowhere close to where it should be. There isn't much gender equality. A lot of people, a lot of women, when they do a particular job, have to work 10 times harder than a man to prove themselves at their workplace. And they're constantly judged. Uh, when you're a man in a particular position, it's far easier for you. Secondly, if a woman puts a point across as aggressively as a man, it's not acceptable. And this happens, and this I have seen in my own experience. So, quality is really nowhere where it should be right now. It's still a struggle. Hats off to the women who make it big. And there are quite a few of us who've done that. So, I mean, hats off to the women who did that. But we still have a struggle ahead of us. I don't think that we are nearly where we should be. Forget India. In those really progressive European countries, there are women who go on marches saying that the pay grades and the pay scales are not the same for a man and a woman. So, no, your generation has work.
Definitely, we definitely have a lot of work cut out for us. So, in times that are tough, in when you just want to just let it all out, what is the one thing that keeps you grounded, and what motivates you to say, tomorrow I'm going to try harder?
Like I said, the curveball. So for me, the more the challenges, the better it is. The less mundane it is, the more exciting it is, and there's something to look forward to. There's something to prove yourself for. And that makes you strive and get better at whatever you do. I think complacency is something that kills creativity. So the more you're allowed to, the more challenges that come your way, the more you sharpen your responses, the more you think, the more you do. So for me, I see it as a positive. I see it as fun and challenges. And when you actually achieve something, when it's very challenging, the sense of satisfaction that you get from that job is far more than if you had got it easy. So that's what keeps me going.
Woman to woman, you are such an inspiration, I have to say.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you so much.
when you are when talking about motivation, is there one particular quote or maybe a song, something that you can always look at and be like, okay, I can keep doing. Apart from curveballs, like anything concrete that reminds you as a physical reminder.
So just as a joke, whenever I used to go for an interview, I used to have this Tina Turner song, You're Simply the Best, playing on my headphones the whole time. And I used to keep playing that you're simply the best, better than all the rest. And, if it did motivate me, it at least made me laugh. So it lightened my mood. So, yeah, that was one thing which it was. But then the songs or the quotes keep changing according to the situation and where you are and what you do. But yeah,
That's
nothing.
really nice. I love that. I love that anecdote. Our last question for you is, for someone in college, for anyone out there who's watching this, who's still trying to figure out life, no matter the amount of curveballs that are coming, any words of wisdom, anything you'd like to say to this person who's still figuring it out?
No matter how much ever you plan in life, there will always be situations or times when you are faced with something where you are not prepared to handle. Don't plan too much. Really, don't plan too much. Take life as it comes and do whatever makes you happy. Because if you do whatever makes you happy, you will be successful. There's nobody who can stop your success. And no matter what the position, if you're unhappy and you're doing it, your quality of work will start suffering at the end of the day, and that will stop your growth. So, my only advice is take life as it comes. Don't be too stressed about things. Like if you take today's situation with COVID and the economic downturn, actually, even way before COVID, we had the whole GDP falling down and the country was in a mess. We luckily have COVID to blame the economy on now. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had anything. And a lot of people lost their jobs and had to think of alternate careers. So always keep an eye out there for new things that happen and enjoy what you do.
The first question: being a former flight attendant, what is the one thing you will never ever eat on a plane?
I don't think I'll ever eat cooked food on a low cost carrier because I don't know from when it's been circulating and how long it's been there.
I will keep that in mind. Okay. The next question is a fill in the blank. Taylor Swift is dash.
Taylor Swift is very dangerous for her ex-boyfriends.
Best answer ever. Okay. The third question is, what is your biggest pet peeve?
I would say seeing people's body language when they're not conscious when people are around and then scratching and
Hmm.
whatever. I think that's just yeah,
I can,
yeah,
I
that.
can, yeah, I can imagine that be really bad.
It's really bad.
Okay, what right now in real estate, what is the weirdest part of your job?
The weirdest part of my job, honestly, I'm still not used to waking up at the same time every day. So I think getting up at that particular time every morning and then waking up at that same time on a Sunday when I want to sleep, that's the weirdest part of my job.
I can relate. And finally, the last question. If you could get one wish right now, it could be anything in the world, what would you wish for?
I just wish that India changes its laws today and actually protects employees because India is a labor-centric country and we don't have labor laws that protect employees who give it their all and who have no safety net like a bank or an institution which can take collaterals when they give out money. And then we don't protect the very people who we go asking votes to. I think that's one thing I'd want to change. I'd want our governments to take note of people and the fact that they give up their lives for their jobs, and then at the end of the day, they can just not be paid, and the person who doesn't do that lives a happy life.